guys, welcome back to another episode of Pretty Suited Podcast, where we discuss career, culture, and the commitment to being our best selves through the lens of some of the most iconic figures in Black entertainment. I'm your host, Lauren A., and today is very special because it is February, right? And I told you guys that in February, I think that I'm going to be highlighting some famous couples in Black entertainment. So whether it be famous couples in TV or in movies. So I'm really excited about kicking this off. First, I want to say, if you grew up like me, we all know that those new feelings of infatuation with someone else, it kind of left us intrigued yet confused. When I was young, I can remember me liking a boy. Mind you, this little boy, I'm talking about first grade, was silver tooth, bad little boy. Now, why I like the boy with silver teeth in his mouth and who was bad, I don't know. I promise you, I've grown up and it's not like me right now. But anyway, this young man was very outspoken, or I just remember him being very outspoken, just kind of like a class clown and things like that. But I do remember him liking me. I remember he used to like pick on me. He used to like tap me on the shoulder and make me look. He used to do all the things that a young person does. But in my mind, I felt like, what is this feeling that I'm experiencing? Do I like him? Like, I know he's picking on me, but is this like a term of endearment? Like, is this something that I should be excited about? So those initial feelings of infatuation really did kind of like leave us intrigued yet confused. And even you had a weird urge to either run from that person because you were afraid, or you decided to pick on them yourself. You call them names. You would, snatch their backpack. You would tell on them in front of the teacher. You would make jokes in front of them and their friends. Like, that was kind of like the young idea of love, of strong likeness, right? But while we can all agree that adolescent love can be cute, I think just like with anything else, it is supposed to mature and it's supposed to develop into something that is beautiful, that doesn't hurt, that is kind, right? And something that you would want to spend your life feeling. Unfortunately, we know that not all love ends up like this. It doesn't mature and even ends up in a reoccurring cycle of complacency and instability. A good example of this kind of love is displayed on a cult classic titled Baby Boy, featuring Yvette and Jodi. So Baby Boy tells the story of a young couple in their early to mid 20s who live in California and is just trying to figure things out. It has very real moments that kind of get you to think about your own circumstance in the life that you've seen and how the love that is showcased around you is reflected into your own life. It debuted in 2001 and it stars Yvette, played by the young and beautiful Taraji P. Henson, and Jodi, played by the R&B icon Tyrese. And it was directed by the legend John Singleton, rest in peace. So let's start with baby girl Yvette. Yvette is one of those girls that we all know. Like most single moms, especially in the 1990s, were really trying to figure things out. I think that was an era where teen momhood was really a thing, but not necessarily as taboo as it was in years prior, like in the 80s or the 70s and so on and so forth. It was something that we saw popping up a lot, not only in our own personal lives, but also on the big screen. I think that Yvette was a hopeless romantic woman. You could tell that Yvette really did love Jodi. She was one of those girls that you could tell was an it girl, very fashionable, very likable. She can get pretty much any man she wanted in her neighborhood. However, Yvette loved Jodi. I think that when it comes down to single mothers, they don't necessarily want to be single moms, right? But in the environment that they're in, that was something that was a possibility, a strong possibility. We're introduced to Yvette being one of those girls who you can see loved her man, but lacked a lot of boundaries. You saw Jodi driving her vehicle. You saw Jodi coming in when he wanted to into their home. And you saw Jodi talk to her in a way that from the inside looking out wasn't quite a big deal because, she had a mouth on her too. But from the outside looking in, you can say that, oh my gosh, that situation can be kind of verbally abusive, which I would say opened a lot of doors to the instability and the toxicity that was displayed in that relationship. Like a lot of women, myself included, you wanted that guy that you were with to act right. And when that happens, you tend to let a lot of things pass that you probably wouldn't even allow to pass with your friends. But because that is your guy, then you allow some things to pass just for the sake of keeping him around. And a lot of times that happens with men that we don't even need to keep around. While her job wasn't the most glamorous of jobs, she even had a stable job more so than he did. So even just asking him to be stable in a financial way, it wasn't really a tall task to ask because it was something that was possible. We did not see Yvette's father in the picture. She didn't have any brothers that she talked about. So this being the only guy in the picture, his presence alone was enough for her. And I would say that's the case for a lot of women. And so allowing those things to pass, like I said, kind of opened the door to the dysfunction that kind of played out towards the end of that movie. There were several times where I really just wanted to shake Yvette because she was you could tell she wasn't a stupid woman. She wasn't a stupid woman at all. She was a woman who was able to critically think about situations. However, usually in those situations where the man doesn't do right, and you have all this emotional equity with this individual, this is the same person who normally performs very well in bed. And that instance can cloud your judgment. And so there were plenty of times where we see the two of them arguing back and forth, her trying to assert some sort of boundary, and him, I'm talking about gold medal gaslighting her into thinking that what she's asking for is too much. And then essentially, as soon as she just gets ready to assert herself to the point where he is out the door, here he comes with some sexual favors or performances that cloud her judgment. And then now she let another thing slide. So again, think about this. This cycle is continuously happening, right? Does wrong, sexual act, let it slide. Does wrong, sexual act, let it slide. How long can this sustain? How long can this sustain in a healthy relationship without real accountability being taken place? She wanted to do better in a sense of the choices that she was making. In the absence of Jodi, when they had the biggest fight and he actually put his hands on her, she kicked him out of the house, but unfortunately allowed another man into the house around her son. As you can see, it's a reoccurring decision-making flaw to where having a man around her or not being able to assert herself in a way that is very stoic, that is very concrete, it allows these men to use her in a way that she doesn't want to be used. And essentially she feels bad for that. You feel bad for her for these things. Just stick to your guns a little bit more, and a lot of these things won't even happen. But that's what ends up happening when you seek the validation of men to the point where it's detrimental to your well-being. And domestic violence is nothing to be played with. I think a lot of times, there are women who have some sort of emotional tie to their abuser, i.e. some Stockholm syndrome, because they feel that violence connects them. And in that situation with Jodi, I feel like while it may have been somewhat of an accident that he put his hands on her, the back and forth between the verbal abuse between the two is just as bad. And so how do you find a healthier way to communicate? Or is that something that's going to continue on and something that your children can actually see for themselves? And then that cycle just keeps reoccurring for generations and generations. And I really felt bad for that. She even attempted to go see Jodi's mother and was like, hey, this is what's going on. How do I get him to act right? How do I get him to stay at home? How do I get him to not cheat on me? And, the answer from the mom was just completely heartbreaking, because this is the tall tale sign that the people around you often influence your decision making. So with the mom expressing to her, to Yvette, that a man is going to be a man and you just got to get over it. Love is love. It's just, you just got to deal with it. That's essentially what she was saying. That kind of course, again, reinforces the idea that the toxicity is normal. And I hate that that's the case, but I even myself have had these similar conversations with women who have gone through things, terrible situations with the men in their life, and they've been so beat down by it that they've accepted it as their reality. So I just wanted better friends for her. I wanted a better mother-in-law for her, to give her real sound advice, to just really take her worth and just tell her that what her son was doing is unacceptable and she shouldn't put up with it. But essentially, that wasn't the case. So Yvette just found herself having to figure these things out on her own. So now let's get into Tyrese. Tyrese, aka Jodi, is just one of those guys who we have either dated him, he is a cousin, a brother, a young uncle, somebody we know is a Jodi. As soon as you see him, you know that this man doesn't have an accountable bone in his body. He is the picture perfect guy who lacks accountability. Visually appealing, right? Fine. But his mannerisms, his thought process, and his decision making is that of an adolescent teenager, even though he is in his 20s. But why is that? Why does this character exist so much in a lot of our communities? This character is portrayed by a person who was enabled, he was coddled, he was a product of violence and poverty. He was a product of trying to be something that he was not. He is a product of a broken home. This I can just go on and on, because a lot of these factors that I'm naming off creates this baby boy. And it's a systematic thing, I feel like. There's a system that was designed to keep this young man in this pubescent thinking, to where growing up is essentially a burden to him, because of all of the things that he has to face once he walks out of that door. He has to face being set back. He has to face racism. He has to face inequalities. He has to face disparities. He has to face all these things. So what does that do? It keeps them in this small-mindedness that stifles not only themselves, but the people around them and the relationships that they have. We all saw that Jodi did not work. He did not work a 9-to-5 job that allowed him to develop financially and take care of his family. A lot of his jobs was hustling, right? Person who sold dresses, he sold maybe some drugs on the side here and there, nickel and diming. He may have scammed or stole some things here and there, but it was never stable. And so why? Because stability will give structure, stability will give accountability, and it will also make you do things that you don't want to do, which essentially in his life, he didn't want to do that. Anything that would make him accountable for his actions, he was staying away from it. And I would say that, yes, environment does play a part in that, but I would say the parenting played a lot of part in that. As we saw, when Yvette was talking to Jodi's mom in the garden, you saw the mindset of the mom in a lot of ways.
Man, I feel so stupid.
You ain't stupid, Yvette.
You're just in love with a man. When you're in love with a man, he can make you feel high. So high you just be in outer space. But a man can also make your ass feel low. Real low. And he can keep you there. Keep you down. If you let him. But you know what? Don't even worry about all that feeling used mess, Yvette. It's just temporary. Everybody gets used. Men use women. Women use men. You just gotta face the fact you're gonna be used.
Jodi pretended like he was the man, which oftentimes a lot of guys do because they feel like just because they are male, they're a man. And unfortunately, he didn't possess enough qualities to qualify him as a man. Somebody who was actually the head of the household, who could make decisions, who could pay a couple bills, who could have some emotional stability, all the things that actually make up men. But in Jodi's mind, he was able to sleep with women and had a baby and things like that. And that's what made him a man. No, that's not how it goes. But unfortunately, Jodi's mother, while she may have complained about all of these things, she still allowed him to kind of carry on the same behavior because in her mind, she just threw up her hands and said, I give up. I raised him. Mama got to live too. Okay. Which I can't necessarily fault her for, because when you are raising a man in this environment of, drive-bys, gangs, and hustling and all the other things, what can you do but just try to keep him alive? And so I think essentially that was her mindset, but unfortunately it did enable a lot of his behavior. And so, I would say too, the lack of Jodi's father being around created a lot of resentment between Jodi and the mom. So what does the mom do? Mom says she got to have a life. So what does that mean? Mom brings other men into the household. So now Jodi, feeling threatened by another man, essentially lashes out and acts out and does things that is hurtful to the mother. And so once that relationship does break a little bit, he kind of forces him to step up and be the man of his own household. While that should not have been the deciding factor for him to actually do what he's supposed to do, I think that was a good Kickstarter, because in order for a man to feel like he has to leave the nest, he has to leave the nest. And I think that relationship with his mom that was continuing to enable him, it wasn't allowing him to actually take responsibility and step up in his own life. Essentially, as Yvette and Jodi did get together and create life together and have a son, both of them did do it prematurely. The premature mother and fatherhood of the two, I would say, did also create more friction in between them. I feel like, yes, they may have cared for their son, but the fact that both of them were so young and still had a lot of things to accomplish and do in order to better themselves, now you're bringing a kid into the picture. It kind of tethers them to each other. And that's the case for a lot of families, I feel like. Married or not, if you share a child with someone, you're a little bit less likely to just cut ties completely than if you didn't have that child. And so, the both of them together felt like they had to stay together for their son, and essentially when they probably should have broken up for a while and just grow and healed with separately and then come back together. But the fact that they did have a kid, I feel like kept them in that revolving wheel, and then it kind of had to develop and mature a little bit later. Because she was quote unquote a good mother, that doesn't necessarily mean the same was going to happen for Jodi. I think his maturity took a lot more time. And so I feel like a lot of her frustration was that he just wasn't growing up in a quick enough time to be an effective partner and father to their kid. But just like Yvette, I do feel like Jodi wanted to do better. You still rooted for the both of them. The fact that Yvette and Jodi still wanted better for themselves, and they had some sort of a good streak in them that didn't make you feel like they got what they deserved. You know what I'm saying? So I do agree that while I could sit here and critique individual behaviors from the both of them, I feel like their story is very, very common. It's so common. That's why it was such a hood classic, because you were able to see yourself and the people that you loved around you in these characters. And the way John Singleton was able to display kind of like the character development of not only Jodi and Yvette, but of Jodi's mother, as well as Melvin, which is Jodi's mother's boyfriend. Like, you were able to see the progression of every person's character in this movie, that you had no choice but to root for everyone. So I do like this story of Baby Boy. Like I said, it's very relatable. However, I do feel that the idolization of that kind of relationship, it can be very dangerous, because they had a lot of, I would say, deal breaker type of things happen in their relationship. But to them, I guess they feel like they could work through it. But to me, I feel like it was so many deal breaker things and red flags in their relationship that I don't feel like it should have kept going. But I'm also grateful to see a story that, while traumatic, did show the progression and maturity of what love could possibly look like when you actually put forth the effort into developing yourself and respecting those around you. Well, I'm going to switch things up because we are talking about popular couples in Black entertainment. And a lot of them do come from film, movies, and television. I do just want to highlight music that was popular at that time and kind of how it relates to the subject at hand. And in today's episode, let's get into our throwback tune. So this throwback tune features a song that came out in the same year, of course, and it's one of those songs that as soon as you hear it, it transforms you back into the time when you first heard it, or when you was in a party that you had no business being in and that song came on, okay? After you just broke up with your boyfriend. And that song is Blue Cantrell's Hit 'Em Up Style. So Blue Cantrell, when I tell you, she was one of those artists that you saw that she had a trajectory of being kind of like a long-standing artist, but unfortunately, she just did not sustain a big career. However, I don't care if she never puts out a song a day in her life ever again. Hit 'Em Up Style was that song in 2001 where you literally just caught your man doing something and that was your anthem. That was the I've Been Cheated On anthem. And so, and honestly, when I was doing my research on the year that this song came out, it was so many songs that kind of featured the man cheated and I'm over him type of vibe. Like, that was like a theme for pretty much most of the songs in 2001. And Blue Cantrell's Hit 'Em Up Style was no different. It features, of course, the tale of woman catching her man cheating, and she decided to make him pay for it. Literally, she said she was going to go on Neiman Marcus, she was going to swipe that card, and she was going to make him pay for his infidelities. And while I don't think that may be the best thing to do, right? Because some people crazy and they may, hit you up style because you spent all their bread. However, if you want to play it smart, there's ways you could do that with lawyers and so on and so forth. But I digress. In this video, she decides to swipe that card for her troubles and goes on a shopping spree with her friends. She drives the Beamer. They're going to Neiman Marcus. They're going to all these stores to just rack it up, just to kind of pay him back for all that he's done. And I feel like in this tale, you could tell that the house that they lived in was, overlooking the valley, was $1 million home. The car that she drove was luxury, all of that. But the men who are particularly in that position often view that because their lifestyle is the way it is, they can afford to be, unfaithful to their lady. And, just because they could pay for it, then it can happen. And the women are just supposed to deal with it. And I just don't think that's the case. And I think that, this was an anthem to kind of reinforce the idea that just because you have a lot of money doesn't mean you could treat me any kind of way. And, I'm getting you back for it. So, Hit 'em Up Style was definitely one of those ones. Blue Cantrell, Where Are You? We could definitely use some of that music these days since the early 2000s sound is coming back. She can definitely make a comeback and make another anthem for us because it's wild out here, okay? I don't know if she needs to revamp it and talk about, dating apps. I don't know, but make it relevant, make it modern. I don't care. But if it can be in a Hit 'em Up style type of approach, I'm with it. Okay. So that brings us to the end of this episode. I hope that you guys enjoy. Continue to like, share, and subscribe, and tell your friends about it. Any other characters that you want to see me do, just leave a comment below or email me with your suggestions. Okay. So as always, you cannot manifest the life you don't feel like you deserve. So create the life that you want and look to the sky for grace. Bye-bye.